He saw it in the way her hand stopped halfway to the glass. Not dramatic, not loud, just wrong. The room was warm with money and quiet conversations. Silver catching the low light, waiters moving like they'd rehearsed every step. Outside, the windows were fogged from the storm pressing against the city. Snow kept coming down. No one was thinking about danger. Then her chair scraped. A small sound, sharp enough to cut through the music. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing followed. One hand at her throat, the other gripping the edge of the table like she was trying to stay upright in water. For a second, no one moved. He was already on his feet. Not because he wanted to be noticed, not because he recognized her, because he knew that look, and he had promised himself he would never ignore it again. The snow had started before sunset. By the time he finished his second coffee, it was thick enough to blur the streetlights into pale halos. The restaurant windows held back the cold, but not the sense of being sealed in. Daniel hadn't meant to stay long. He'd taken the late maintenance shift at the office building 3 blocks over. The storm rolled in faster than the forecast promised, and the buses were already delayed. The restaurant was open, warm, and close. He told himself he'd wait it out. He kept his coat on the back of the chair. Boots still damp. Phone face down beside his plate. Across the room, the staff moved differently around one table. Quieter. Straighter backs. He didn't look long enough to place why. He wasn't interested in important people. Important people didn't usually notice men like him. He thought about Lucy. She hated storms, said the wind made the house sound hollow. He'd left the nightlight on for her. Checked her inhaler twice before he walked out the door. She'd rolled her eyes at him, but she still let him brush her hair back and listen to her breathing. He never ignored breathing. That was why the small sound cut through everything. A chair leg scraping tile. Not loud, just out of rhythm. He looked up without meaning to. The woman at the center table wasn't old, but she carried herself like someone used to being watched. Dark coat folded neatly behind her chair. Hair pinned back, not a strand loose. A glass of water untouched in front of her. Her hand hovered near her throat. The people around her leaned in, confused. One of them laughed softly, like maybe she was joking. She wasn't. Her mouth open again. Nothing. Daniel felt it in his chest before his mind caught up. He was already moving. He didn't ask permission, didn't announce himself. He stepped between 2 men in pressed suits who looked irritated at first, then uncertain. "She's choking," he said. One of them blinked at him. "We're handling, you're not." The woman's eyes were wide now. Not dramatic, just afraid. Her skin had gone a shade lighter, like the blood had stepped back. He positioned himself behind her. His hands hesitated for a fraction of a second. Lucy at 6 years old, coughing on a piece of apple. Lucy at 7, the wheeze in the middle of the night when the inhaler wasn't enough. He pushed the memory aside. Focused, he wrapped his arms around the woman's upper abdomen, just below the ribs, locked one fist over the other. "Stay still," he said quietly. He pulled inward and up. Once. Nothing. The room felt smaller. He heard someone say, "Call 911," but no one moved fast enough. He adjusted his grip and pulled again. Harder. A sharp, ugly sound broke from her throat, but still nothing came free. He didn't panic. Panic wasted oxygen. Third thrust. He felt it before he saw it. The shift. The obstruction dislodging, something small and pale hitting the white tablecloth. She coughed. Loud this time. Air rushing back in like it had been waiting outside the door. He stepped back immediately. Didn't hold her shoulders. Didn't steady her more than necessary, just enough to make sure she wasn't falling. The restaurant filled with noise all at once. Chairs moving, someone crying softly, a waiter repeating, "Are you okay?" too many times. She bent forward, hands on her knees, pulling in breath after breath, each one shaky, real. Daniel's heart was beating too fast now. It caught up late, like it had been running behind him. One of the suited men looked at him differently now. Not irritated, not grateful either. More like calculating. "Sir, your name?" the man asked. Daniel shook his head once. "She's breathing. That's what matters." He reached for his coat. The woman straightened slowly. Her eyes lifted, scanning the room until they found him. He hadn't realized how clear her eyes were. Not soft. Not cold either. Just sharp. Used to seeing details. Wait, she said. Her voice was rough from the coughing. He paused, not because he wanted to stay, because walking away while someone tried to speak felt wrong. Thank you, she said. 2 words. No performance in them. No trembling drama. Just something steady. He nodded. You should get checked, he replied. Make sure there's no damage. She studied him like she was memorizing something. His jacket, his boots, his face. What's her name? She asked. He hesitated longer this time. Names had a way of sticking. Daniel, he said finally. Daniel, she repeated, like she was testing how it felt. Take care, he added, already stepping back. A man with a phone raised it slightly. Maybe to take a picture, maybe to make a call. Daniel shifted so his face wasn't clear. The snow outside had thickened. He could see it swirling under the streetlight. He put his coat on as he walked. Didn't look back again. Behind him, the room was still recovering its balance. He pushed through the heavy glass door and into the cold. The wind hit his face hard enough to make his eyes water. It felt clean out there. Honest. He pulled his hood up and started toward the bus stop. His hands were still shaking. Not from fear. From memory. He texted Lucy's babysitter. Everything okay? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. She's asleep. Breathing fine. He stood there for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the word breathing. Fine. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Snow gathered on his shoulders. The city looked quieter than usual, like the storm had pressed pause on everything. He hoped it would stay that way. He didn't know someone inside had already started talking. Didn't know a name like Victoria Hale didn't disappear from rooms quietly. And he didn't know that walking away would make him harder to forget. The bus never came. After 20 minutes, the transit app blinked red and shifted the arrival time again. Snow swallowed the road in slow layers. Tires moved carefully, like they didn't trust the ground anymore. Daniel checked the time. Lucy would wake if the wind got loud enough. She always did around midnight when storms dragged on. He pictured her sitting up in bed, listening. He started walking. It wasn't far. 25 minutes if the sidewalks were clear. Tonight it would be longer. He kept his head down and moved steady, boots pressing clean tracks into untouched snow. Halfway down the 3rd block, his phone vibrated. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He stopped under the weak light of a street lamp and pulled it out. Unknown number. He almost let it ring out, but something in his chest tightened. He answered. Daniel Carter? A woman's voice asked. Calm. Professional. He went still. Yes. This is Elise Ward. I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Victoria Hale. He didn't respond. She wanted to ensure you arrived home safely. Snow slid from a tree branch overhead and fell beside him. I'm fine, he said. She is very grateful. I know. A pause on the other end. If you'd be willing, she would like to speak with you directly. Briefly. Daniel looked down the empty street. No cars. No footsteps behind him. That's not necessary. She insists. He almost laughed at that. Almost. I was just there, he said. She thanked me. Yes, but she doesn't owe me anything. That isn't how she sees it. He shifted his weight. The cold was creeping through the soles of his boots now. Look, he said quietly. I did what anyone should do. There was a slight intake of breath on the line. Not disagreement. More like recognition that he meant it. I understand, Elise replied. Still, Ms. Hale would appreciate the opportunity. He thought about Lucy again. About how quickly a room can freeze when someone stops breathing. He didn't want this turning into something else. I have a daughter, he said instead. I try to keep things simple. Another pause. We respect that, Elise said carefully. May we at least confirm your address to send? No. The word came out sharper than he intended. Silence. I'm sorry, he added. Softer now. I don't want anything. On the other end, Elise lowered her voice slightly. Mr. Carter, with respect, this incident will not remain private. His jaw tightened. What does that mean? There were guests, staff, someone recorded a portion of it. He closed his eyes briefly. Of course, it may circulate, she continued. Ms. Hale would prefer to manage it responsibly. Manage it. He didn't like the sound of that. I don't need managing, he said. That's not what I meant. He knew it wasn't, but the word stayed with him anyway. If it appears publicly, Elise went on, we can ensure your family's privacy is protected. Family. The wind shifted direction, colder now. You can't control the internet, he said. No, she admitted, but we can limit access. Legal teams, statements, media suppression where possible. Legal teams, statements. He pictured Lucy walking out of school with cameras near the gate. His stomach tightened. I'll think about it, he said. That's all we ask. She gave him a direct number before ending the call. He stood there a moment longer, phone still in his hand, snow settling quietly around him. He hadn't asked for this. He resumed walking. By the time he reached his apartment building, his shoulders were stiff. The lobby heater hummed unevenly. Mrs. Alvarez from 2B was asleep in the chair by the mailboxes again, television flickering softly. He climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Habit. Easier to listen that way. Outside Lucy's bedroom door, he paused. No sound except the soft hum of the air purifier. He stepped inside. She was curled on her side, one arm tucked under her cheek. The nightlight cast a small amber glow across the room. Her inhaler sat on the bedside table where he'd left it. He watched her breathe. In, out, even. He exhaled slowly, only then realizing he'd been holding tension in his chest since the restaurant. He brushed snow from his coat and hung it quietly, changed out of damp clothes, sat on the edge of the couch without turning on any lights. His phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't unknown. It was Marcus from work. You on the news? Daniel's heart dropped. He opened the message thread. A link. He didn't want to press it. He did anyway. The video was short. 30 seconds. Shot from across the dining room. Blurry at first. Then clearer. Victoria Hale at the center of the frame, her hand at her throat. Then him stepping in. Someone had zoomed in on his face during the third thrust. The angle caught everything. The moment the obstruction came free. The room erupting. The caption below the clip read, CEO saved by mystery hero during blizzard dinner. Views climbing. Comments multiplying. He closed the video. His reflection stared back at him in the dark screen. He looked tired. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt exposed. Another notification. Different number this time. Local reporter asking for comment. He powered the phone off. Silence settled around the apartment again, but it didn't feel calm anymore. He walked back to Lucy's room, watched her breathe. The promise he made years ago, after the first ambulance ride, after the first night he thought he might lose her, had been simple. Always act. Always protect. He hadn't considered what protection meant outside the walls of their apartment. He sat in the doorway until the clock read 1017 a.m. In another part of the city, Victoria Hale was sitting in a quiet medical suite, despite insisting she was fine. Doctors checking her throat for damage. Advisors speaking in low voices in the hallway. Her phone rested in her hand, the same video playing on repeat. She watched him step forward again and again. No hesitation, no performance. She paused the frame on his face. There was something there she recognized. Not bravery. Responsibility. It unsettled her more than the choking had. For years she had built systems that moved faster than people. Companies that scaled. Decisions that cut cleanly. Tonight, a stranger had acted without calculation. And then he had left. She replayed the moment he said his name. Daniel. Outside her window, the blizzard kept covering the city in white. Inside, something had shifted in a way she couldn't quite measure yet. and in a small apartment across town, Daniel Carter sat awake in the dark, understanding that storms didn't always stay outside. By morning, the storm had buried the sidewalks up to the benches. Daniel woke before his alarm. For a moment, he forgot. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after heavy snow, when traffic hasn't started yet. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling that faint pressure in his chest again. Not panic, just awareness. Then he remembered the video. He reached for his phone on the coffee table, turned it back on. Notifications stacked themselves across the screen before it even finished loading. Missed calls, unknown numbers, messages from Marcus again, a text from the school's automated system about delayed opening because of weather. He didn't open the video this time. He didn't need to. Instead, he searched her name, Victoria Hale. He knew it vaguely from somewhere. Headlines about acquisitions, interviews about market expansion, a face that appeared beside numbers too large to mean anything to him. Now every news site had added a new line under her photo. Saved during medical emergency by unidentified man. Unidentified lasted about 6 hours. Someone had found his name in the restaurant's reservation log. He hadn't used a fake one. Why would he? Another headline. Daniel Carter, single father, rescues tech CEO during blizzard. Single father. He exhaled slowly. From the bedroom, Lucy coughed. He was on his feet before the second one. She was sitting up when he entered, hair tangled, blanket twisted around her legs. "Morning," she mumbled. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just dry." He handed her the water from her nightstand, watched her sip. She squinted at him. "You look weird." "Thanks." "No, not sick, just weird." He almost smiled. "Snow day," he said instead. "School's delayed." She brightened a little at that. While she ate cereal at the small kitchen table, he kept his phone face down again, but it vibrated every few seconds, crawling across the wood toward her bowl. She noticed. "You gonna answer that?" "Not right now." She shrugged. Kids accepted things adults complicated. After breakfast, he helped her with her nebulizer. The soft mechanical hum filled the room. He timed her breathing without looking like he was timing it. In, out. He learned to read the smallest shifts. The way her shoulders lifted if air didn't move right. The way her eyes changed when she tried not to scare him. She finished and handed the mask back. "Can we build something?" she asked. "Like what?" "A fort. In the living room." He looked at the notifications lighting up the dark screen again. "Yeah," he said. "Let's build a fort." They dragged blankets over chairs, used couch cushions to block drafts. Lucy insisted on taping a paper sign that read, "No ground yips." He let it stay. For an hour, the world shrank to the space under that blanket roof. She told him about a book she was reading. He nodded in the right places. He tried not to check the phone. It buzzed anyway. This time she reached for it before he could stop her. "Dad." She turned the screen toward him. His face, frozen mid-motion. Hands locked around Victoria Hale's torso. The headline, bold and bright. She looked back at him slowly. "That's you." He didn't lie. "Yeah." "You saved that lady?" He took the phone from her gently and set it aside. She couldn't breathe. Lucy was quiet for a moment, processing. "Like me?" The word landed heavy. "Not the same," he said carefully, "but breathing is breathing." She studied him in that serious way she had sometimes, like she was measuring something inside him. "Are you in trouble?" "No." "Then why are you making that face?" He hadn't realized he was. He forced his shoulders to loosen. "I just don't like attention." She nodded once, like that made sense. "Well," she said, crawling deeper into the fort, "you look like a superhero." He almost corrected her. He didn't. By noon, the snow had slowed. News vans hadn't reached their block yet, too many side streets still unplowed. But the calls kept coming. When Lucy settled with crayons, he stepped into the hallway to answer one. It was the school principal. "Mr. Carter, first let me say how proud we are." He closed his eyes briefly. "I understand there's media interest. We won't share Lucy's information, of course. But reporters have called. I don't want her approached, he said. Of course. She has asthma. I know, the principal replied softly. We'll be careful. Careful wasn't the guarantee. After the call, he dialed the number Elise had given him the night before. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Carter. They have my name, he said without greeting. Yes. My daughter's school is getting calls. A brief pause, papers shifting somewhere on her end. We anticipated that. Anticipated, he repeated. Mr. Carter, please understand. Once the footage went public, identifying you was inevitable. We're monitoring major outlets. We can issue a formal statement requesting privacy. I don't want a statement. With respect, silence can invite more speculation. He rubbed his forehead. I don't want cameras outside my building. We've already contacted several networks, she said. Most will respect a minor's privacy if clearly stated. Most. He swallowed that word. What does she want? He asked finally. Ms. Hale? Yes. A slight shift in Elise's tone. She would like to meet with you, privately. No cameras. None. No press. None. He hesitated. And no charity check, he added. Silence again, longer this time. Understood, Elise said. They arranged a time for later that week. Neutral location. No photographers. When he ended the call, he stood in the hallway a moment longer, staring at the worn carpet beneath his boots. Inside the apartment, Lucy was humming to herself. He felt the two worlds pressing closer together. Across the city, Victoria Hale was sitting in her office despite her board advising rest. The medical report lay unopened on her desk. She was breathing fine. That wasn't what kept her there. On her screen, analytics charts tracked the surge in online traffic connected to her name, brand impact, public sentiment, stock fluctuations. She minimized the window. Instead, she opened the video again. Watched him step in without asking who she was. Watched him leave before anyone could applaud. Her advisors had suggested a public thank you event, a controlled appearance. Good optics. She had said no. Something about turning that moment into a headline felt wrong. Her throat still felt raw when she swallowed. Not from injury, from the memory of not being able to pull air in. For the first time in years, she had been dependent on someone with no contract, no obligation. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes briefly. The room was large, quiet, designed to impress. It had never felt smaller. She picked up her phone and sent a short message to Elise. Make sure his daughter is protected. No publicity angle, just protection. Elise replied almost immediately, already in motion. Victoria stared out the window at the city still half covered in snow. She had built a life where every risk was calculated. Last night hadn't been. And the man who disrupted that equation wanted nothing from her. That unsettled her more than the headlines ever could. The first man showed up 2 days later. It parked across the street just after lunch. Engine idling. Logo half covered in snow but clear enough. Daniel saw it from the kitchen window. He didn't say anything at first. Lucy was at the table doing math homework. Pencil pressed too hard against the paper. The school had reopened, but he'd kept her home another day. He told himself it was because the sidewalks were still icy. The van door slid open. A man stepped out with a camera bag. Daniel felt something tighten behind his ribs. He walked to the living room and pulled the curtain closed without making it obvious. Lucy looked up. Is it still snowing? No. Then why are you closing it? Sun's too bright. She squinted toward the window like she might argue, then went back to her worksheet. His phone rang. Another unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Different number. He muted it. A knock came 15 minutes later. Firm. Confident. Like they believed they had a right to be there. Lucy froze. Stay here, he said. He opened the door halfway, leaving the chain on. A woman in a thick coat smiled too brightly. Mr. Carter? I'm with Channel 8. Just a few quick questions. No. We'd love to share your side of the story. The public's very interested. No, he repeated. She tried to keep her smile. You're a hero. People are inspired. He felt heat rise in his face. "I'm a father," he said evenly. "That's it." She glanced past him, trying to see inside the apartment. "Is your daughter home? We'd never film her without consent, but—" He shut the door before she finished. Lucy was standing in the hallway now. "Who was that?" "Wrong address," he said. She didn't believe him. That evening, 2 more knocks came. He didn't answer either. By the 3rd day, someone had posted a photo of their building online. The caption guessed which unit was his. He felt anger then. Not loud, not explosive, cold. He called Elise. "This is exactly what I didn't want," he said. "I know," she replied. Her voice was tighter than usual. "We're issuing formal cease and desist notices where applicable. That doesn't stop people with phones." "No," she admitted. He paced the length of the living room. "They're circling my home. We can arrange temporary relocation," she offered. "A hotel under a different name." He stopped pacing. "No, Mr. Pissing, Carter, she's comfortable here. We can increase private security presence. I don't want guards outside my door." There was a quiet exhale on the other end. "Then allow us to handle the media more aggressively." He leaned his forehead briefly against the cool wall. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. A pause. "Because Ms. Hill asked us to. That's not what I mean." Another pause, longer this time. "Because she understands vulnerability," Elise said carefully. He didn't know what to do with that. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon. Neutral location meant a private conference room in a midtown building owned by one of Victoria's subsidiaries, but not publicly linked to her. Elise assured him no press would know. He took Lucy to school that morning himself, walked her all the way to the entrance. 2 reporters lingered near the corner, pretending not to look. Lucy noticed. "Are they for you?" she asked quietly. "Probably." She hesitated before pushing the door open. "Don't let them be mean," she said. He swallowed. "I won't." The conference room smelled faintly of new carpet and coffee. Victoria was already there when he arrived. No cameras, no assistants inside the room. Just her. She stood when he entered. Up close, she looked smaller than she had at the restaurant. Not fragile, just human. Her hair was down this time, resting against the dark sweater instead of a tailored jacket. "Daniel," she said. He nodded once. "Ms. Hale." "Victoria," she corrected gently. He didn't repeat it. They sat across from each other at a long table that didn't need to be that long. For a moment, neither spoke. "I'm sorry about the media," she said first. He studied her face while she spoke. "No cameras meant no need to perform." "I told them no interviews," he replied. "I know." She folded her hands on the table, then unfolded them. "I didn't expect it to escalate this quickly." "It always does," he said. A flicker of something crossed her expression. Recognition, maybe. "I've instructed my legal team to pursue anyone who approaches your daughter," she continued, "and to remove identifying information from major outlets. That won't erase what's already out there." "No," she agreed, "but it can slow it." He leaned back slightly. "Why does this matter so much to you?" She met his eyes directly. "Because I know what it feels like to lose control of your own narrative." He almost said something sharp in response, but stopped. "This isn't a narrative," he said instead. "It's my kid. I understand." "Do you?" The question came out before he could soften it. She didn't look offended. "My father built a company before I did," she said after a moment. "When he died, I inherited not just the business but the scrutiny. Cameras outside our home, reporters at my school. I was 15. He hadn't known that. I didn't choose that," she continued. "But it followed me anyway." Silence settled between them. He shifted in his chair. "I don't want Lucy growing up thinking this is normal," he said. "It shouldn't be." Another quiet stretch. She looked down briefly, then back at him. "You walked away," she said. He frowned slightly. "After the restaurant. You left before anyone could thank you properly." "I was thanked." "You could have leveraged it." "For what?" visibility, money, influence. He almost laughed. That's not how my life works. I'm starting to see that. Her voice wasn't mocking. It sounded thoughtful. She leaned forward slightly. What would make this right? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Nothing, he said finally. You're breathing. That's enough. Something shifted in her expression at that. Subtle, almost like discomfort. I've spent most of my life building things that scale, she said slowly. Systems, platforms, investments. But that moment, she stopped herself. He waited. That moment was personal, she finished. He nodded once. It was, he agreed. They didn't need to describe it. She inhaled carefully, as if still testing her throat. I can't undo the attention, she said, but I can redirect it. He watched her carefully now. Redirect how? She held his gaze. Toward something useful. He didn't respond. I don't want to turn you into a headline, she added, but I don't want this to fade into nothing either. He felt the weight of that. I didn't do it to start something, he said. I know. Then don't. She was quiet after that. He expected resistance. Instead, she nodded slowly. Then I'll find another way, she said. He studied her for a long second, trying to see if that was strategy or sincerity. He couldn't tell. When he stood to leave, she stood too. Your daughter, she said softly. Is she okay? Yes. Good. He paused at the door. Keep the cameras away, he said. I will. He left without shaking her hand. Victoria remained standing for a moment after the door closed. The room felt different now. Not smaller, just clearer. She sat back down and stared at the empty chair across from her. Redirected. The phrase lingered. Outside, the snow had started to melt. Slush lining the sidewalks. The city moving again like nothing had happened. But something had. She reached for her phone. Elise, she said when the call connected, we're going to fund emergency response training. Public access. Free. A pause, nationwide. Another pause. And make sure his name stays out of it. She ended the call and sat very still. For years, she had measured impact in quarterly reports. This felt different. Not larger, just heavier. Across town, Daniel picked Lucy up from school and noticed the reporters were gone. For now, he walked her home through streets still wet from melting snow. She slipped her small hand into his. You're not in trouble anymore, she asked. He squeezed her fingers gently. Not today, he said, and for the first time in days, the air felt easier to breathe. The reporters thinned out, but they didn't disappear. They learned the rhythm of the block. Mornings were quiet, late afternoons busier, evenings, sometimes a car parked too long with tinted windows that didn't quite match the neighborhood. Daniel noticed everything now. He walked Lucy to school every day that week, not because she needed it, because he did. She talked about a spelling test, about a boy who kept snapping his pencil in half. Ordinary things. He listened harder than usual, storing the sound of her voice in his chest like something that might be taken. On Thursday, a woman approached them halfway down the block. No camera, no microphone, just a large tote bag and an easy smile. Mr. Carter? He didn't slow. I'm not interested. I'm not press, she said quickly. I work with a parenting blog. We focus on resilience stories. He kept walking. Lucy looked up at him. The woman matched his pace for 3 steps. Just a short interview. It could really inspire families dealing with medical challenges. He stopped. Lucy almost bumped into him. My daughter is not content, he said, voice even. The woman blinked, smile faltering. I didn't mean, I know what you meant. He stepped slightly in front of Lucy without thinking about it. The woman muttered something about missed opportunities and turned back the way she came. Lucy tugged his sleeve. Why do they want to talk about me? They don't know you, he said. That doesn't answer it. He hesitated. Sometimes people see something hard and they want to turn it into a story that makes them feel better. She frowned. But it's not their story. No, he agreed quietly. It isn't. When he got home, there was an envelope taped to the door. No stamp. Hand delivered. He peeled it off carefully. Inside was a printed photo. Lucy walking into school beside him, taken from across the street. His jaw tightened. There was no note, no message, just the image. His hands felt steady in a way that worried him. He called Elise again. "This isn't media," he said when she answered. "This is something else." He described the photo. Her tone changed immediately. "Do not touch anything further," she said. "We'll have someone collect it." "I already picked it up." "That's fine, just don't discard it." Within 2 hours, a plain sedan pulled up. A man in a dark coat introduced himself quietly and took the envelope. "Likely a freelancer hoping to sell exclusive content," he said. "We'll trace the print origin." Daniel didn't ask how. That night, Lucy had trouble sleeping. Not a full asthma flare, just restlessness. She shifted under the blankets, breathing slightly faster than usual. He sat in the chair beside her bed. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yeah." "You're lying." He let that sit. "Someone took a picture of us today," he said finally. Her body went still. "Why?" "I don't know." She stared at the ceiling. "Are they bad people?" He thought carefully before answering. "Some people forget that other people are real." She turned her head toward him. "I'm real. I know." She reached her hand out from under the blanket. He took it. Her fingers were warm, small. "Don't let them take me," she said, voice barely there. His throat tightened unexpectedly. "I won't." He stayed in that chair until her breathing evened out again. Across the city, Victoria was reading a report Elise had placed on her desk. Attempted contact at school, photograph delivered to residents, legal countermeasures initiated. Victoria read each line slowly. Her office lights were dim. Most of the building had emptied hours ago. She pressed her thumb against the edge of the paper until it bent. "This is because of me," she said quietly. Elise didn't argue. "We're containing it," she replied. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The city looked normal again. Snow gone. Traffic moving. "You said he has asthma training because of his daughter." "Yes." "How accessible is that training?" Elise blinked slightly at the shift. "Varies. Community courses exist, but cost and time can be barriers." Victoria nodded once. "Draft a proposal," she said. "Emergency response education integrated into public schools. Funded privately. Anonymous donors." "Anonymous?" Elise asked carefully. "For now." She didn't want her face on it. She wanted it done. Elise left the office quietly. Victoria remained by the window. The memory came back without warning. The moment air wouldn't come. The shock of it. The humiliation of it. She had negotiated billion-dollar deals without her pulse rising. She had walked into hostile boardrooms without flinching. But that moment at the restaurant had stripped all of it away. She had needed someone, and he had acted without waiting to see who she was. She pressed her palm flat against the glass. She wasn't used to owing people. Not like this. The proposal moved faster than Daniel expected. He didn't know about it at first. What he knew was that the car across the street stopped parking there. The knocks stopped. The school implemented a no-media perimeter policy. Someone was pulling strings. He felt it. One evening, as he was washing dishes, his phone buzzed with a message from Elise. The photo source identified. Freelancer contract terminated. Civil penalties pending. He stared at the text for a long moment. He typed back, "Thank you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. "You don't owe us gratitude," she wrote. "We're correcting collateral damage." He didn't respond. A week later, Lucy came home with a flyer in her backpack. Free community emergency response workshop hosted at local recreation center. Open to all families, he read it twice. No corporate logo. No sponsor listed. "Are we going?" Lucy asked. "Maybe. It says kids can learn too." He looked at her. "Why would you want to?" She shrugged. "In case someone stops breathing." The simplicity of it caught him off guard. They went. The recreation center gym smelled like rubber flooring and old basketballs. Folding chairs lined up in uneven rows. A nurse stood at the front with a training mannequin on a table. The room was half full. Parents, teenagers, a few elderly couples. Daniel recognized none of them. That felt good. The nurse began explaining airway obstruction, demonstrating hand placement. Daniel watched closely despite knowing the motions by heart. Lucy sat beside him, serious, absorbing every word. When it was time to practice, she hesitated in front of the child-sized mannequin. "Okay," the nurse said gently. "Hands here." Lucy's small fists positioned awkwardly at first. Daniel resisted the urge to correct her immediately. She adjusted on her own. Pulled upward. Too soft. "Stronger," the nurse encouraged. Lucy pulled again. Harder this time. The plastic piece dislodged from the mannequin's airway with a click. Lucy's eyes widened slightly. She looked at her father. He nodded once. Later, as they walked home under streetlights that no longer reflected off snow, she was quiet. "Dad?" "Yeah. Was that what you did?" "Pretty much." She thought about that. "I didn't know I could do that." He felt something shift inside him. Neither had he, once. Across town, Victoria received attendance numbers from similar workshops happening simultaneously in 5 other districts. Enrollment had exceeded projections. No press coverage, just community bulletins. She scrolled through anonymized feedback forms. Grateful this exists. Didn't realize how simple the steps were. Bringing my sister next time. She set the tablet down, this with measurable impact. But it didn't feel like the metric she was used to. It felt direct. Her phone buzzed. Board member requesting update on recent philanthropic activity. She ignored it for now. Instead, she opened the video again. Watched Daniel step forward. Paused it at the moment his hands locked into position. She noticed something she hadn't before. He hadn't looked around to see who was watching. He had looked only at her. Later that week, she drove past the recreation center alone. No security detail. Just her car. She didn't go inside. She sat parked across the street for a few minutes, watching families leave with folded pamphlets in their hands. She wondered what it would feel like to sit in a folding chair without anyone recognizing her, to learn something without it being reported. She drove away before anyone noticed. In his apartment that same night, Daniel tucked Lucy into bed. "You think we'll need to do that again?" she asked sleepily. "I hope not. But if we do," he brushed hair away from her forehead, "we'll be ready." After she fell asleep, he stood in the doorway a little longer than usual. The apartment felt steadier now. Not safe exactly, but less fragile. He understood something differently. Protection wasn't always hiding. Sometimes it was teaching. Across the city, Victoria sat alone at her dining table. No guests, no staff. She had canceled 2 investor dinners that week. In the quiet, she tried to remember the last time she had learned something purely because it mattered, not because it scaled. She couldn't. The storm that night had passed, but its weight remained, not heavy enough to crush, just enough to press against choices, and neither of them were living quite the same way anymore. The foundation wasn't announced. It appeared. One Monday morning, a short article ran in the Metro section of a local paper. Private donor funds citywide emergency response training initiative. No photo of Victoria. No mention of the restaurant. No reference to Daniel. Just details. Funding allocated for public schools, grants for community centers, subsidized certification programs for parents and teachers. Daniel read it while Lucy tied her shoes by the door. He recognized the timing. He folded the paper carefully and set it aside. At school drop-off, 2 parents stood near the entrance holding the same article. "Did you see this?" one asked the other. "Free training now." "About time," the second replied. No one looked at him. That felt deliberate. When he got home, his phone buzzed. "Elise, it's rolling out faster than expected," she said. "I saw. We've kept your name completely out of internal documents." "Thank you." A pause. "She'd like you to know this wasn't meant to override your request." He leaned against the kitchen counter. "I figured." "Do you?" He considered that. "Yes." Another pause. "She's being questioned by the board," Elise added quietly. "About what?" Redirection of discretionary funds without formal publicity. Daniel didn't know much about boards, but he understood tension. She didn't have to do this, he said. No, Elise agreed. After the call ended, he stood in the quiet apartment. He hadn't asked for any of it, but he couldn't deny the relief that came with knowing other parents might now learn what he had learned the hard way. That afternoon, Lucy brought home a permission slip, emergency skills module, integrated curriculum pilot program. She grinned when she handed it to him. They're teaching it in school now. He read the fine print. Funded through a private grant. He signed it without hesitation. Across town, Victoria sat at the head of a long conference table. Her board members spoke in careful tones. We support philanthropy, one said, but anonymity forfeits brand advantage. This initiative lacks measurable ROI, another added. Victoria listened without interrupting. When they finished, she folded her hands. Return on investment isn't always quarterly, she said. A few exchanged glances. Our shareholders expect strategic alignment, someone pressed. She held their gaze evenly. This is strategic. In what sense? In the sense that public trust cannot be purchased through advertising. Silence. And in the sense, she continued, voice steady, that if one person in this city avoids the experience I had last week, the investment has already paid off. They shifted in their seats. Her throat felt tight, but not from injury, from restraint. One board member leaned forward. With respect, Victoria, your personal experience should not dictate corporate direction. She met his eyes. It doesn't. That wasn't entirely true. But she didn't elaborate. After the meeting, she remained alone in the conference room. The chair across from her was empty. She stared at it for a long moment. Personal experience. She had spent years separating herself from that. From feeling too much. From reacting without calculation. The blizzard had cracked that distance, and Daniel's refusal to capitalize on it had unsettled something deeper. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elise. Workshop enrollment doubled this week. Victoria allowed herself a small exhale, not satisfaction. Something quieter. The attention shifted. Not away from Victoria entirely, it never did, but sideways. Articles began highlighting the training initiative, interviewing nurses, parents, teachers. The narrative moved from rescue to readiness. Daniel watched it happen from the edge. One evening, Lucy sat at the kitchen table practicing compressions on a pillow. 1, 2, 3, she counted softly. He leaned in the doorway, listening. She looked up mid-count. Am I doing it right? Look strong. She smiled faintly and kept going. Later that night, his phone rang. Not unknown this time. Victoria. He let it ring twice before answering. Daniel. Victoria. Her voice was quieter than he remembered. I won't keep you long. He waited. I wanted to make sure the rollout hasn't created new problems for you. It hasn't. A pause. They're not circling your building anymore? No. And your daughter? She's good. Another pause. I drove past one of the centers, she said unexpectedly. He didn't respond right away. I didn't go in, she added. Why not? I wasn't sure I'd know how to sit in a folding chair without it becoming something else. He almost smiled at that. They're just chairs, he said. For you. He understood that. There was a shift in her breathing on the line. Daniel, she said slowly. Have you ever considered teaching? He frowned slightly. I'm not certified. You're experienced. He shook his head, even though she couldn't see it. I learned because I had to. That's often the best kind. He leaned back against the wall. I don't want to be the face of anything. I'm not asking you to. Silence stretched between them. He could hear faint city noise on her end. Traffic. Maybe wind. Why are you really calling? He asked finally. Another small pause. Because I've built a life around being needed, she said, but not around needing anyone. He didn't know how to answer that. The night at the restaurant, she continued, voice steady but lower now, was the first time in years I had no control. I don't like that feeling. No one does. I've been trying to understand it. And, and I think I've been confusing strength with isolation. The words hung there. He shifted his weight. I don't know much about strength, he said. Yes, you do. He let that pass. On the other end, she inhaled carefully. I don't expect gratitude, she said, and I don't expect friendship. Good. A soft sound that might have been a restrained laugh. But I wanted you to know, she finished, that this isn't about optics. It's about correction. Correction? Of how I've been living. He thought about that after the call ended. Correction. In Lucy's room, he watched her sleep again, as he often did. He realized something had shifted inside him, too. Before the restaurant, his world had been narrow by necessity. Work, home, breathing treatments, bills. Since then, it had widened in uncomfortable ways. But not all widening was exposure. Some of it was connection. The next week, the school invited parents to observe the new emergency module. Daniel sat in the back of the classroom while Lucy demonstrated proper hand placement in front of her peers. Her voice didn't shake. She corrected a classmate gently. No, like this, she said, adjusting his hands. The teacher glanced at Daniel with quiet acknowledgement. He felt something settle in his chest. Not pride exactly. Relief. Across the city, Victoria attended a board meeting she would normally have delegated. She listened more than she spoke. When the session ended, one member approached her privately. You seem different, he said. She considered that. Different how? Less interested in expansion. She didn't answer immediately. I'm interested in sustainability, she said instead. He nodded, uncertain. As she walked back to her office, she caught her reflection in the glass walls. For years, she had moved through rooms without hesitation. Now she moved with awareness of breath, of fragility, of the fact that no amount of power prevents a body from failing. Later that evening, she sent Elise a short message. Find out what certification Daniel would need to teach community sessions. Not mandatory. Optional. Elise replied, understood. Victoria set her phone down. The city lights flickered outside her window. The blizzard felt distant now, but she still remembered the exact second when air had refused to come, and the way a stranger's hands had forced it back. That memory no longer felt like humiliation. It felt like instruction. The first time he stood at the front of a room, his hands were steadier than he expected. It wasn't a stage, just a multi-purpose room at the recreation center. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, coffee in paper cups along the back wall, a whiteboard with faint ghost marks from old lessons. He had said no twice before saying yes. The certification course had taken 2 weekends. He hadn't told Lucy at first. He didn't want her thinking this was because of her. It was, but not in the way she might believe. Now 15 parents sat in metal chairs, coats draped over the backs. A toddler cried somewhere near the exit. A man in a work uniform checked his watch. Daniel cleared his throat. Okay, he said. We'll start with choking response. His voice didn't carry like a professional instructor's. It didn't need to. He demonstrated hand placement slowly. Explained pressure. Timing. What to watch for in someone's eyes before panic fully sets in. He didn't mention the restaurant. He didn't mention Victoria. He spoke about kitchens, school cafeterias, backyard barbecues, normal places where air can disappear without warning. When it was time for practice, he moved between pairs quietly, adjusting posture with brief touches. Stronger, he told one woman gently. It has to be firm. She nodded and tried again. At the back of the room, unnoticed by most, Victoria stood beside Elise. No cameras, no press release. She had chosen a coat that blended in. She watched him teach. He didn't scan the room for recognition. He didn't change his tone knowing she was there. He simply focused on the hands in front of him. Elise leaned slightly toward her. You don't have to stay, she whispered. I know. Victoria didn't move. At one point, Daniel glanced toward the back as he reached for a demonstration mannequin. Their eyes met briefly. No nod, no acknowledgement, just recognition. He continued speaking. After the session ended, Parents lingered to ask questions. Some thanked him. One man said, "I never thought I'd need this, but now I feel less useless." Daniel nodded at that. Less useless. He understood the weight of that phrase. When most of the room had cleared, Lucy ran in from the hallway where she'd been waiting with a coloring book. "You did good," she announced loudly. He raised an eyebrow. "You were spying?" "Observing." Victoria smiled faintly at the exchange. Lucy noticed her then. "That's the lady," she whispered. Not quietly enough. Daniel's shoulders tensed for half a second. Victoria stepped forward slowly. "Hi," she said gently. "You must be Lucy." Lucy studied her with open curiosity. "You're the one who couldn't breathe." Victoria didn't flinch. "Yes." Lucy nodded once, serious. "That's scary." It was. Lucy looked at her father. He fixed it. Victoria met Daniel's eyes again. "Yes," she said. "He did." There was no performance in her voice. No boardroom polish. Lucy shifted her weight. "I learned how too," she added. Victoria's expression softened. "I'm glad." Silence settled for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just real. Daniel cleared his throat slightly. "We should head home." Lucy waved before walking toward the door. Victoria remained where she was. "Thank you," she said quietly once Lucy was out of earshot. "For what?" "For not letting this become about me." He considered that. "It was never about you," he said. She nodded slowly. "I'm starting to understand that." He picked up his jacket. "You don't have to come to these," he added. "I know." She hesitated. "But I might." He didn't argue. Spring came without ceremony. The snow was a memory. The sidewalks dry. The air easier. The foundation expanded quietly beyond the city. Grants approved in districts that had never received private funding before. Community centers in neighborhoods Victoria had only seen from car windows now hosted training sessions every weekend. Daniel taught twice a month. Not because he needed the income, the stipend was modest, but because something inside him felt aligned when he did. Lucy sometimes helped set up chairs. One evening after a session, as they walked home under a sky that stayed lighter longer now, she slipped her hand into his again. "Are you famous?" she asked. "No. They know your name at the center. That's different." She thought about that. Will they ever forget? He looked down at her. Probably. She seemed satisfied with that. At a traffic light, he noticed a large digital billboard across the street. "Emergency preparedness starts with us." Simple text. No faces. He recognized the phrasing. Victoria had fought for that wording during a strategy call he'd overheard when Elise accidentally left him on speaker weeks ago. Starts with us. Not with a hero. Not with a CEO. With us. Across town, Victoria stood alone in her kitchen, sleeves rolled up, attempting to cook something without assistance. She had dismissed the staff early. The knife felt awkward in her hand at first. She wasn't used to preparing her own meals. She thought about the night at the restaurant. The way the room had blurred. The way control had dissolved in seconds. For years, she had structured her life to avoid vulnerability. Contracts, security, strategy. But vulnerability had arrived anyway. And it hadn't destroyed her. It had redirected her. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Elise. First quarter reports show strong public approval metrics tied to training initiative. Victoria stared at the screen. She typed back, "That's not why we're doing it." Elise replied, "I know." Victoria set the phone aside. She finished cooking. Sat at the table alone, but the loneliness felt different now. Less sharp. She had begun attending some sessions openly in smaller districts where no one recognized her immediately. She sat in folding chairs, listened, learned. The first time she practiced compressions on a mannequin herself, her hands shook slightly. Not from weakness, from memory. Air leaving, air returning. She closed her eyes briefly before pressing down, firm, steady. Across the city, Daniel stood in Lucy's doorway again one night. She was asleep, one arm flung across the pillow. Her inhaler rested untouched on the nightstand. He didn't sit this time. He simply watched her breathe. In, Out. Even. He realized something had shifted inside him too. Before the blizzard, his world had been about prevention. Avoid risk. Avoid notice. Avoid exposure. Now it was about preparation. He couldn't stop storms. He couldn't stop cameras from existing. But he could teach hands what to do when air disappeared. He stepped back into the hallway and turned off the light. In another part of the city, Victoria stood at her office window one last time before leaving for the night. The skyline glowed steady. She thought about control differently now, not as something to grip, but as something to release when necessary. The night she choked had not been a spectacle. It had been a moment, a human one, and the man who stepped forward had not tried to own it. He had simply acted. That choice had unsettled her. It had also steadied her. The foundation would continue to grow. Boards would question. Investors would analyze. But beneath all of it, something quieter remained. A room filled with ordinary people. Hands learning where to press. Breath returning. And two lives that had widened. Not because they sought attention, but because they chose responsibility over comfort. The storm had passed. What remained was not fear. It was readiness.